Stay with me. You hear me? Stay right here. It is not your time.
The Buckhead supermarket parking lot was busy that Wednesday morning. Cars pulling in. People rushing out. Everyone moving fast, everyone with somewhere to be. A woman stood over a man who had collapsed beside a black Mercedes. She was in a white blouse and dark trousers. She had a plastic sleeve with a resume inside tucked under her arm when she saw him fall. She dropped everything and ran to him. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Nothing. His face was pale. His lips were beginning to turn blue at the edges. People watched, but nobody moved. A woman in a yellow blouse raised her phone. She was recording. A man in a business suit took 1 step forward and then stopped, as if something invisible blocked him. "Don't get involved," someone said from the back. "You don't know this man." But she was already on her knees. She locked her hands together, placed her palms on the center of his chest, and she pushed. Hard. Fast. 30 compressions. Then 2 breaths. Then 30 again. Sweat broke along her hairline. Her freshly ironed blouse wrinkled at the elbows. She did not stop. She did not know this man. She did not know his name. She did not know that the life she was fighting to save would one day turn around and save hers. The man's name was Samuel Adeyemi, CEO of Adeyemi Logistics Group. Net worth $800 million. One of the most powerful businessmen in Atlanta. And the woman on her knees in the parking lot was Amina Okoye, a single mother. A woman who had spent her last $14 printing a resume for a job interview she was now going to miss. But she did not care. She only knew that a man was dying, and she was the only one willing to stop. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that subscribe button if you're new here, because what Samuel did when he discovered who she was and what she sacrificed will leave you with a lesson you'll carry for life. Amina Okoye was 32 years old. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of Atlanta with her 7-year-old son, Kelechi. She had come to America 9 years ago with a suitcase, a certificate, and the kind of faith that does not ask questions. She worked as a receptionist at St. Francis Clinic in Midtown.
She was good at her job.
Reliable.
Precise.
Her husband's name was Daniel. And in the beginning, he was not a bad man. He was charming. He laughed easily. He told her she was the most hardworking woman he had ever met. What he did not tell her was that he had no intention of matching her work with his own. From the very first year of their marriage, Amina paid for everything.
Rent. Food.
Kelechi's expenses. She handed Daniel her salary every month because he asked and she loved him, and she believed that was what a good wife did. She told herself he was trying. She told herself things would balance out. But they never balanced out. When the company went through budget cuts and Amina lost her job, something shifted in Daniel. The money stopped coming in, and he could not handle it. He did not go out and find work. He stayed home, and he grew angry. First it was his words, sharp and cutting, aimed at her in the evenings when Kelechi was asleep. "You are useless. You cannot even keep a job. What are you good for?" She absorbed it because she did not want her son to hear fighting through the walls. Then the words were not enough for him. The first time he hit her, she told herself it would not happen again. The second time, she told herself he was under pressure. By the third time, she had stopped telling herself anything. She just learned where to stand so that Kelechi would not see. She learned which topics to avoid. She learned how to move quietly through her own home. One night, he came home, and Kelechi was still awake, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. Daniel walked past him without a word, found Amina in the bedroom, and raised his hand over something she could no longer even remember. Kelechi heard it from the kitchen. He was 7 years old. That was the night something broke inside Amina that was stronger than fear. She waited until Daniel was asleep. She packed one bag. She woke Kelechi gently, pressed one finger to her lips, and they walked out of that apartment at 2 in the morning and did not look back. She moved them to the east side of the city, far enough that Daniel would not think to look. She changed her number. She found a room to rent. She started again from nothing, which was still more than she had when Daniel was taking everything. Since then, she has survived on cleaning shifts and laundry work. But Kelechi never complained. He ate whatever she put in front of him. He did his homework under the kitchen lamp while she ironed clothes for the next morning. Sometimes she looked at him and her chest ached in a way that had no name. 2 days ago, she was on a lunch break from a cleaning shift when her phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Amina Okoye? This is Ashford and Associates. We would like to invite you for an interview this Wednesday at 9 a.m. She held the phone very still. Then she went to the bathroom and gave herself 30 seconds to cry. The good kind. The kind that comes when something you stopped letting yourself want becomes possible again. She spent her last $14 printing her resume. She paid extra for the color printer, so the header would look clean and professional. She ironed her blouse 3 times. She prayed on her knees and asked for one thing. Not the job. Just the chance to show what she could do. On Wednesday morning, she was dressed before 6:30. She had her resume in a plastic sleeve to protect it from the morning dew. She had rehearsed her answers in the mirror. She had enough bus fare. She had everything she needed. She walked to the bus stop in the early morning light, and everything felt possible in the way that early mornings sometimes feel possible before the day has a chance to happen to you. She was walking past the Buckhead supermarket parking lot when she saw the man. He was standing beside a black Mercedes, leaning against the passenger door. Even from a distance, something about him looked wrong. He was heavy-set, somewhere in his 60s, wearing a crisp button-down shirt. His face was wet with sweat. His hand was pressed to his chest. His eyes were not focused on anything. Amina slowed down. A woman walking ahead of her glanced at the man and kept moving. A younger man on his phone looked over once and looked away. Amina stopped. The man's knees buckled. He slid down the side of the Mercedes and hit the asphalt hard. His body went still. She ran. She dropped to her knees beside him. She pressed 2 fingers to the side of his neck. She searched for a pulse. There was nothing. His lips were already turning faintly blue at the edges. Sir. She tapped his shoulder. Sir, can you hear me? Nothing. She tilted his head back. She lifted his chin. She listened for breath. There was none. Someone call 911, she shouted. A small crowd had gathered the way crowds always gather, at a safe distance, watching. A woman in a yellow blouse had her phone raised. She was recording. A man in a business suit stepped forward and then stopped, as if an invisible line was drawn in the asphalt in front of him. He probably just fainted. A voice said from the back. He will come around. Amina looked at the man's face. Ashen.
Still.
The blue deepening in his lips. She locked her hands together, placed the heel of her palm on the center of his chest, and she pushed.
Hard. Fast.
30 compressions. The way she learned 6 years ago at St. Francis in a training session she had mostly forgotten until this moment when her hands remembered everything her mind had let go. She gave 2 rescue breaths. She started again. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted under her breath. Her arms burned. Sweat broke along her hairline. Her ironed blouse wrinkled at the elbows.
She did not stop.
A teenage boy finally dialed 911. They say 15 minutes, he called out. 15 minutes. Amina pressed harder. A lean man in a gray jacket pushed through the crowd at a run. He dropped beside her. His eyes were wide with panic. Mr. Adeyemi. His voice broke. Mr. Adeyemi. You know him? Amina did not stop compressions. I am his driver. Musa. I was parking the car. I did not see. Musa. Listen to me. She looked at him directly. We cannot wait 15 minutes. Where is the nearest hospital? Piedmont. 10 minutes. Then that is where we're going. Help me get him up. It took 3 people to lift Samuel Adeyemi into the back seat of his own Mercedes. Amina climbed in beside him. She kept one hand on his chest and watched his face as Musa drove fast through Atlanta traffic, running one amber light and then another, both hands tight on the wheel. She had 4 minutes before her interview was supposed to start. She watched them go one by one through the car window, the bus stop, the clock on the bank building, the towers of Midtown rising in the distance. Everything she had prepared for, dissolving quietly behind her. She did not let herself think about it. She pressed 2 fingers to Samuel's neck again. The pulse was there now, weak and unsteady, like a candle in the wind.
But there.
Stay with me, she said again, more quietly this time. Not a command, a request. You hear me? Stay right here. At Piedmont, the nurses took him fast. Amina stood on the sidewalk outside the emergency entrance and watched the doors close. She stood there for a few minutes. She did not know why. She just stood. A nurse came out. You came in with him? Yes. He is stable. He is going to be okay. She looked at Amina's face. At the wrinkled blouse, the scuffed shoes, the expression of someone who had used up the last of something. Whatever you did out there, you did it right. Amina nodded, watching her time. She was 30 minutes late, but only if she could just get there maybe she would be able to meet up. Madam. Musa ran after Amina, but she couldn't wait. She guessed he was going to thank her. She caught the next bus immediately. She sat with her wrinkled blouse and her heart pounding, rehearsing what she would say when she walked in late. She arrived at Ashford and Associates 40 minutes late. She walked to the reception desk. Her hair had loosened. She was breathing hard from the rush. My name is Amina Okoye. I had a 9 o'clock interview. She stopped herself. She looked at the receptionist's face and already knew. Ms. Okoye, the panel finished 20 minutes ago. The position has moved forward.
Please.
5 minutes. Just 5 minutes with someone. I have my resume right here. I am qualified. I am sorry. There is nothing I can do. Amina looked down at the plastic sleeve in her hands. $14 worth of resume that nobody would ever read. Thank you, she said quietly. She took the elevator back down. She walked out onto Peachtree Street and stood in the October sun. And for one moment, just one, the voice inside her asked the question she had been holding back all morning. Should she have kept walking? Should she have told herself it was not her problem? She closed her eyes. Then quietly, like a whisper to herself, she thought, at least I saved him. Whatever else this morning took from me, at least I saved him. It was not much, but it was enough to lift one foot and then the other. She did not know, as she walked to the bus stop, that the man she had just comforted herself with was lying in a hospital bed 2 miles away, very much alive, and thinking only of her. If you want to know what Samuel did when he found out who she was and what she had given up to save him, stay right there. Make sure you are subscribed and the bell is on, because you do not want this next part to be the one you miss. Meanwhile, at Piedmont Hospital, Samuel Adeyemi woke slowly. White ceiling, bright lights, the steady beeping of a machine beside him. A doctor in a white coat stood at the foot of the bed, reviewing a chart. Mr. Adeyemi. The doctor's voice was measured and calm. You suffered a cardiac arrest this morning. Your heart stopped completely. You were without a pulse for several minutes before CPR was administered. He paused. Whoever performed that CPR kept blood moving to your brain until you reached us. To be direct with you, sir, without that intervention you would not be here. Samuel stared at the ceiling and said nothing for a moment. The doctor continued explaining. Something about monitoring. Something about tests. Something about the next 48 hours. Samuel heard the words, but they moved past him like water past a stone because his mind was somewhere else entirely. He kept seeing her face. He had not been fully conscious in that car. He knew that. But somewhere between the parking lot and the hospital doors, in the fog of a body fighting to stay alive, he had seen her leaning over him. Dark eyes. A white blouse. Her lips moving, counting, urging. Her hands never leave his chest. He had felt the pressure of her palms like an anchor keeping him from drifting somewhere he could not come back from. He did not know her name. He did not know anything about her. But he knew, with the particular clarity that comes to a man who has just been dragged back from death, that she was not an ordinary person. What troubled him was the look on her face in that car.
Not fear.
Not inconvenience. Just pure, focused determination. Like saving him was simply what needed to be done, and she was going to do it. And then she had disappeared. No name. No number. Nothing. Why had she not waited? Where had she been going in that formal blouse, that early in the morning, with a file tucked under her arm? Had she made it? Was she all right? He turned his head toward Musa, who was sitting in the plastic chair beside the bed with red eyes and clasped hands. The hospital has cameras, Samuel said. Musa looked up. Every entrance. Every corridor. Get me the footage from this morning. His voice was quiet, but there was nothing uncertain in it. I want to find her, Musa. I want to know who she is. Across the city, Amina sat on the bus going home and stared at nothing. She did not regret stopping. She had made peace with that on Peachtree Street. She would stop again tomorrow if she had to. That was simply who she was, and she had long stopped apologizing for it. But the interview, that was the part that quietly broke something in her. Not because of the job itself, but because of everything she had promised Kelechi that morning, and how she had told him to wait a little longer, telling him things would change. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth for a moment. Then she straightened up and looked out the window and let the tears fall. When Amina got home, she saw Kelechi standing on the small patch of concrete outside their building. He was still in his school clothes, his backpack hanging off one shoulder, squinting down the street the way he always squinted when he was waiting for her. When he saw her, his face opened up the way a child's face opens when the person they were worried about finally appears. She felt it hit her square in the chest. She thought of every promise she had made him. Every things will be different. She looked at his small, serious face coming toward her, and she felt a grief so quiet and so specific it had no name. He reached her. He looked up at her face and read it the way he always read it. Immediately and completely. Mom. He said it carefully. Did you get the job? She crouched down to his level. She took both his hands in hers. She looked at him directly, because he deserved that much.
No, she said.
I did not get the job. His face moved. Just slightly. But on my way there this morning, she continued, I saw a man collapse in a parking lot. His heart had stopped. Nobody around him was helping.
So I stopped and I helped him.
I got him to the hospital. And the nurse told me he is going to be okay.
She paused.
By the time I got to the interview, it was too late. They had already moved on. Kelechi was quiet for a moment. He looked at her with those old, serious eyes. Then he stepped forward and put his small arms around her neck and hugged her. It's okay, Mom, he said into her shoulder. You did the right thing. Everything is going to be fine. She closed her eyes and held her son on that small patch of concrete outside their building and breathed him in. 7 years old. Telling her everything would be fine. Amina cried. She hugged him tighter and cried. She didn't know that life was about to take her round a journey that would shock her. 1 week later, Amina dressed up for her cleaning job and left early. Just as she stepped out of her room, she saw a man wearing a suit approaching her apartment. She stepped back sharply. Her hand gripped the door frame. He was tall, briefcase in one hand, a white envelope in the other. He looked at her the way people look at someone whose name they have confirmed on a list. Ms. Amina Okoye? Her chest tightened. She thought of Daniel immediately. She always thought of Daniel first. Old fear has a way of arriving before logic does. What if he had finally found them? She did not move from the doorway.
She did not speak.
She simply looked at the man and felt 14 months of careful distance threatening to collapse in a single moment. Ms. Okoye, he said again. Who are you? Her voice was steady. She had learned to make her voice steady even when nothing else was. I am from Briggs Property Management. I have a formal notice for you regarding your tenancy. He held out the envelope. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she exhaled. Slow and silent. The kind of exhale that empties more than just your lungs. She took the envelope. The man nodded professionally and turned and walked back down the corridor without another word. She closed the door. She leaned her back against it. She stood there in her own hallway with the envelope in her hand and waited for her heartbeat to come back down from wherever fear had sent it. Then she opened it. Eviction notice. Formal. Printed. A reference number at the top. 3 months of unpaid rent detailed in plain figures that did not care how hard she had been trying. For weeks to clear the balance in full or vacate the premises. Legal proceedings to follow if neither condition was met. She read it once. She folded it and put it in her bag and went to work because falling apart on a corridor floor would not pay the rent. 3 days later, Kelechi came home early. He stood at the door holding a folded note and said nothing. She took it from him. A letter from his school. Polite. Regretful.
Clear.
Outstanding fees meant he could no longer attend until the balance was settled. She read it twice. She looked at her son's face. He was holding himself together with everything he had. "It is temporary," she said. "I will fix this." That evening after he slept, she sat at the kitchen table and wrote down the name of every staffing agency in Atlanta she could find. 7 names on the back of an old receipt. The next morning she visited every single one. She would clean anything,
Carry anything.
work any hour. She just needed a chance. And what she did not know was that she was about to walk into something greater than anything she could have planned for herself. If you have made it this far, drop a comment below and tell us what you think of Amina. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now and turn on the bell, because what is about to happen next is going to blow your mind. Amina got a part-time job from another agency downtown. The pay was twice the amount she got for her 2 jobs. Within 2 weeks, Amina was running on barely 6 hours of sleep and sheer will. She cleaned offices from 6 to 10 in the morning. She did laundry shifts in the afternoon. She took the weekend work without complaint. She came home every evening, made whatever she could stretch into a meal, sat with Kelechi while he did his homework, and put him to bed. Then she sat at the kitchen table and counted what she had made and what she still needed and how many days were left on the eviction notice. The numbers were moving.
Slowly. Painfully.
But moving. She paid the first month of overdue rent on a Thursday afternoon and stood at Mr. Briggs's door and handed him the envelope and looked him in the eye when he took it. He said nothing. She said nothing. She walked back to her apartment and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Amina paid part of Kelechi's school fees. She called the school and explained and asked for 2 more weeks to pay up. Amina kept going. She did not allow herself to think about how tired she was. Tiredness was a luxury. Stopping was not an option. She just kept her head down and kept moving, the way she had always kept moving, because there was a 7-year-old boy counting on her, and that was the only calculation that mattered. On Tuesday, 6 weeks after Amina started, her afternoon assignment was at Meridian Tower, one of the tallest buildings on Peachtree Street. 42 floors of glass and steel, home to some of Atlanta's most powerful companies. The executive floor was hosting a board meeting for one of the building's major tenants. Nearly 40 people were gathered inside a glass conference room. Catering staff moved in and out with trays and coffee urns. The corridor outside was crowded with trolleys, boxes, and the controlled chaos that always came with important people preparing to discuss important things. Amina had been assigned to keep the service corridor clear and the supply station stocked. She was doing exactly that when she noticed a catering trolley parked directly in front of the emergency exit. A clear safety violation. She glanced around. No one seemed to be paying attention. Without making a fuss, she moved the trolley a few feet to the side so the exit door could open fully. Then she returned to her work. She did not know the trolley belonged to Rosal Collins. Rose Collins was the senior facilities director. 30 years old. Perfect makeup.
Chanel bag.
The kind of confidence that came from being obeyed. She appeared in the corridor 2 minutes later.
She saw the trolley.
Then she saw that it had been moved. Her eyes landed on Amina. "Who moved my trolley?" She turned calmly. "I did. It was blocking the emergency. I did not ask for your explanation." Her voice rose immediately, sharp enough to cut through the noise. Conversation slowed. A catering assistant froze mid-step. 2 junior executives at the end of the hall paused to look. "You are a part-time cleaner," Rose continued, louder now. "You do not move equipment. You do not make decisions on this floor. You do not touch anything that does not belong to your cart. Do you understand me?" Amina kept her voice steady. The trolley was blocking a fire exit. I moved it for safety. She stared at her. Safety, she repeated, as if the word offended her. You're going to lecture me about safety? Do you know who I am? Do you know where you're standing? A small crowd had gathered, cleaners, catering staff, a junior manager holding a tablet. They watched. No one spoke. Rose turned abruptly to the supply station beside her cart. She grabbed a glass of dark red punch from the service station. Her hand trembled with the sharp anger of someone whose authority had just been challenged. Without warning, she threw it over Amina's head. The punch was cold and dark red. It soaked through her uniform instantly, staining the gray fabric a deep crimson. It ran down her hair, her face, her neck, dripping onto the carpet in slow, spreading circles. The corridor went completely silent. No one moved. The elevator of the corridor opened. The man who stepped out was not expected until the following day. His assistant had called ahead, but the message had not yet reached the floor. Samuel Adeyemi stepped into the corridor, carry-on bag in one hand, travel suit still creased from the flight. He stopped when he saw the crowd. He saw the dark stains spreading across the carpet. Then he looked at the woman holding an empty glass. Then Amina. At the red liquid soaking her uniform. At the streaks running down her face. At the way she stood upright, holding herself together. She turned slightly, and he saw her face clearly. The world tilted. It was her. The woman who saved him. He had hired a private investigator. Reviewed hospital footage. Retraced every step of that morning. But they found nothing. And now she was here.
Soaked.
Humiliated. Surrounded by people who had watched and done nothing. He turned his eyes to Rose. Rose had already gone pale. Mr. Adeyemi, Rose said quickly, straightening. Sir, I wasn't expecting you until... But Samuel didn't answer. He walked past Rose without a glance and stopped in front of Amina. Up close, the stain looked darker. Her uniform clung to her arms. A drop slid from her hair onto the floor. Are you hurt? He asked. She blinked, surprised. Not by the question, but by the man standing in front of her. He was the man she helped weeks ago. He looked healthy. No, she said softly. He nodded once. Do you remember me? He asked.
Yes.
I remember you. How are you doing? She asked, her eyes filled with concern. Even now, soaked and humiliated, she was asking if he was all right. Richard, Samuel said quietly without turning. His assistant had already stepped out of the elevator behind him. Get her something dry to change into. And a towel.
Now.
Then Samuel turned to face the corridor. All of it. Every person who had been standing there when he walked in. His gaze moved slowly across each face, unhurried, the way a man looks at people he intends to remember. Eyes dropped one by one. When he spoke, his voice was loud enough for every person in that corridor to hear. Every single one. This woman, he said, saved my life. 6 weeks ago, I collapsed in a parking lot on Peachtree Road. My heart stopped. There were people around me. He paused. Let it sit. Not one of them moved. This woman got on her knees on hot asphalt and performed CPR on a stranger. She rode with me to the hospital and stayed until she knew I was stable. She saved my life. His voice did not waver. And every single one of you stood in this corridor and watched her be humiliated. And not one of you said a word. Then he looked at Rose. Rose cleared her throat. Sir. She moved equipment without authorization and became difficult when I addressed. She moved a trolley that was blocking a fire exit, Samuel said flatly. Which is correct procedure. Rose hesitated. Yes, but the manner. Rose. Samuel said her name once. You poured a glass of wine over a staff member. In a public corridor. In my building. During a corporate event. Silence pressed in. I want your access card on Richard's desk before you leave this floor, Samuel continued. Your contract is terminated effective immediately. HR will contact you regarding the formal process. Rose stared at him. Sir, surely this is an overreaction. When he looked back, a junior staff member had handed Amina a towel. I've been looking for you for 6 weeks, Samuel said quietly. We pulled hospital footage. I hired someone to find you, but we couldn't find you. He glanced at her stained uniform and something tightened in his jaw. I am sorry it took this long. And I am deeply sorry for what just happened to you in my building. Samuel took Amina to his office after she cleaned up herself and changed into the outfit she had worn before changing into work clothes. She sat across from him in a chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent and folded her hands in her lap and waited. What's your name? Samuel asked. Amina. Amina Okoye. He said it back to her the right way. Then he leaned forward and looked at her the way a man looks at someone he genuinely wants to understand. Why are you working as a part-time cleaner, Amina? You do not look like someone who belongs in a service corridor. I belong wherever the work is, she said. That is what survival looks like. He waited. She understood he was asking for more. So she told him. All of it. The clinic layoffs. Daniel. The abuse and the midnight escape with one bag and a sleeping child. The missed interview on the morning she found him. The eviction notice. And how Kelechi was sent home from school. Samuel sat back in his chair. He looked at her for a long moment with an expression she could not fully read. Then he said, I am sorry, Amina. I am deeply sorry for all of it. It is okay, sir. I needed to keep going. My son needed to eat. His fees needed to be paid. The rent needed to be cleared. So I kept going. That is all I know how to do. Samuel nodded slowly. Which company did you interview with 6 weeks ago? The morning you found me. She looked at him. Ashford and Associates. Samuel Adeyemi went very still. Ashford and Associates was his. She had missed an interview at his own firm because she stopped to save his life. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his decision was already made. Amina, I want you to come in tomorrow morning. Not to clean. I want to look at your credentials properly and have a real conversation about what you can do. He paused. What I can tell you right now, just from this conversation, is that your credentials are excellent. And you stopped for a stranger when nobody else would. That tells me more about your character than any resume. She looked at him carefully. She had learned to be careful with hope. Hope had cost her before. I am not offering charity, he said, reading her expression. I am correcting an error. A significant one. Amina went home full of hope. The next morning, Amina sat across from Samuel in fresh clothes at Ashford Associates with her resume in the same plastic sleeve, and she answered every question directly and with plain truth. Samuel called Richard. Told him to prepare an offer. The salary made her breath catch. There's also a company apartment, he added. And your son's school fees will be cleared today. Not as a loan. As part of what this company owes you, for what you gave up the morning you saved my life. Amina pressed her lips together. You helped me without knowing who I was, Samuel said simply. You had everything to lose, and you stopped anyway. If you had kept walking, I would not be sitting here. My children would not have a father. My company would be grieving a chairman. He looked at her steadily. The least I can do is make sure your son has a future. That is not generosity, Amina. That is justice. She nodded. She did not trust her voice. She signed the offer letter. Kelechi returned to school. He made friends. Amina showed up every morning before anyone else and left after most of them. She learned the systems. Learned fast. Solved problems before they grew. Within months, she became one of the most reliable people on the floor. She asked questions that made senior staff look up from their screens. She solved problems before they became problems. She remembered names and details and followed up without being asked. Amina invested a portion of her salary. Small amounts at first, then larger ones as she learned. She read everything she could find about financial planning and asked Richard's questions. 2 years after Amina started, Samuel came to her office. He sat down across from her and placed a document on the desk between them. You've grown this division by 30%, he said. You've saved this company money. We didn't know we were losing. You're joining the Strategic Advisory Board. Amina stared at her name. She thought about asphalt under her knees. About a stranger with no pulse. About the interview she never reached. Tears filled her eyes.
She did not stop them this time.
I never imagined, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I never imagined one morning could lead here. One choice, Samuel said softly, when she looked up. That's all it took. Meanwhile, at the other end of the city, Daniel was scrolling through his phone when he saw something that made his thumb froze on the screen. Amina's photograph was in the business section of an Atlanta news page. She was standing in a corporate office, dressed sharply, her name listed beneath the photo as a strategic advisor at Adeyemi Logistics Group. She looked confident. She looked successful. She looked like a woman who had rebuilt her entire life from nothing. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then something ugly moved across his face. He had left her with nothing. He had expected her to stay nothing. And here she was on the front page of a business column, looking like she had never needed him at all. Daniel arrived at the company lobby the following day and told the receptionist he was there to see Amina Okoye. He said he was family. Amina came down herself when security called up. She had been half expecting this moment ever since the photograph was published. She stepped out of the elevator and saw him standing in the lobby and felt nothing. She has moved past everything he did for her. He looked smaller than she remembered. Older. A little desperate around the eyes. Amina. He stepped toward her and his voice dropped immediately into that register she used to fear.
Low.
Deliberate. The voice that came before things got worse. We need to talk. Privately. We can talk here.
His jaw tightened.
I saw your picture. You are doing well for yourself. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. I am going through a difficult time. I think after everything we shared, you owe me something. I just need you to transfer some money into my account. She looked at him steadily. I do not owe you anything, Daniel. His smile disappeared. Amina.
His voice hardened.
I know where you live now. I know which school Kelechi attends. I am not asking. I am telling you. Put money in my account or I will make your life very uncomfortable. You know what I am capable of. He took one step toward her. A door opened behind him, and Samuel walked into the lobby. Samuel read the scene in 3 seconds. The way Amina was standing. The man in front of her. The particular tension in her shoulders that he had never seen before. He crossed the lobby without breaking his stride. Security. 2 men appeared from either side of the entrance immediately. Samuel stopped beside Amina and looked at Daniel with the complete calm of a man who holds every advantage in the room and feels no need to announce it. Daniel was escorted out with a warning never to return. Amina stood in the lobby and exhaled slowly. She did not feel dramatic relief. She felt something quieter than that. The clean, final sensation of a door closing on something that should have been closed a long time ago. She turned to Samuel. Thank you. He looked at her carefully. Are you all right? She thought about it properly. About a midnight escape with one bag. About a child who had never once complained. About everything. Yes, she said. I really am. The following week she filed for divorce. The papers were served. Daniel did not contest them because he had nothing left to fight with. He had learned what Amina had known for a long time. A year later, Amina sat at her desk on the 8th floor of Meridian Tower, Atlanta stretching below. Kelechi thrived, top of his class. One Thursday, his teacher called to say he'd written an essay on the most courageous person he knew, his mother, who had stopped for a man in a parking lot. Amina kept it beside Samuel's first offer letter, a quiet reminder of how far she'd come. On Fridays, she picked Kelechi up, holding him a moment longer, savoring the life they'd fought for. Mom, are we happy?
Yes.
We really are. He ran ahead, laughing, and she smiled, full. She had learned that true kindness asks for nothing, and sometimes returns everything. Amina did not save Samuel because she expected a reward. She saved him because a man was dying and she was there, and she could. That is all. That was enough. And that was everything. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who is tired. Someone who is running on nothing but will and love for the people counting on them. Someone who needs to know that doing the right thing in the dark, when nobody sees and it costs you everything, is never wasted. Drop a comment below and tell us what moment in Amina's story touched you the most. If you're not yet subscribed, hit that button now and turn on the notification bell because you do not want to miss what is coming next. Thank you for watching.